Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. But before I get to him, I will introduce my less special guest just because he's here more normally. It's not that surprising that he would be here. Dustin Furman, executive producer. How are you today, my friend?
I'm feeling great. Now, for the audience, they're going to hear Sacred Symbols before this show. But for Colin and I, this is our first show back. And it feels good. I feel refreshed, ready to rock. And I'm so excited to be podcasting with our other guests. This was, we were discussing about doing the show. And I was like, hey, we got to see if we can get this surprise person on. The video people know, but Colin, I'll let you introduce him.
Yeah, it's Gene Park from the Washington Post. Thrilled to have you here. Happy New Year to you, my friend. And before we get into anything, congratulations on, I was going to say your recovery, but it makes you sound like you were an alcoholic.
Congratulations. Why I used to be an alcoholic.
Well, congratulations on that too. But more recently, congratulations on being on The Men, my friend. It's great to see you. How are you?
Yeah, you can't get rid of me, man. Just keep coming back on the podcast. I'm sorry.
Good.
You know?
Good. Excellent. Well, it's wonderful to see you. I
don't want to put too much pressure on you guys, but like, I went on Sacred Symbols and then I got better. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. I'm just saying that those are the sequence of events. You know.
Indeed. I hope that we can send similar curative resources to our friend Rick Hogue right now. By the time people have already heard this, he will have already gone into his situation as well. But for people that don't know, Rick Hogue had a stroke, and he's I've been in constant contact with his wife actually, and getting daily updates. I'm going to defer to her public statements on that, but of course we are sending him positive energies, prayers, thoughts, and all of the rest as well. But we would have already gone into that in more detail on the regular show.
Absolutely.
So if there is, we'll have another, hopefully Hogue will be on the rebound soon, and we'll be able to have more evidence of what you're saying, which is that Sacred Symbols is indeed a curative place to be, like a health spa.
Let's hope so.
All right, my friends. Today we're here.
I also remember you said only the good die young in a previous episode.
Yes.
And I was like, Colin, I'm not dead yet, so I guess I'm not that good. No,
that's right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, Billy Joel. I don't know exactly what, I'm a Long Islander. I got my Islanders thing on today, actually. And, Billy Joel is like our king from Long Island. Absolutely. And so he is forever referenced. Like there are so many things that people say from where I'm from, we're just obsessed with them. Mm-hmm. So it's a weird, it's like a weird quote. I don't know. He hasn't had like a notable song in 30 plus years, probably. So
that's true.
Yeah. So I don't even know if people like him anymore, but I got to see him at AT&T Park in San Francisco. That was really cool.
I love him.
Yeah, he's great. And I always wanted to see him with Elton John, but I never got to see one of those. I saw Elton John separately, but remember they used to do those tours together. That was
awesome. And it made the most sense,
Totally. And they would switch off on who opened for who. I like that a lot. All right. Mm-hmm. Now to the subject at hand. Crisis Core Reunion. We're here to discuss the recent re-release of the 2008 PSP classic. One of the great PSP games of all time, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. It was fun for me to go back and play it again. I spent about 20 hours with it, 19 hours and change. And as everyone knows out there, I'm very, very OCD about keeping I immediately, when I play role-playing games that keep time, I immediately figure out how the time system works. I try to pause it. I try to do all these things, and I figure that out, so my time's always very accurate. And this game was very friendly in that regard. And I got to say, I loved it. I thought it was fucking awesome. And this is obviously my second time playing it, having played the PSP version and wrote the strategy guide for it at IGN, which was an incredible undertaking, but a lot of fun. And I'm just so high on Final Fantasy VII right now that it feels like it just fits. And I thought it was a very daring move to release it. And I don't understand why they're underselling it so much, because it's a straight up remake. And I don't know why they didn't just call it that as well, or figure out a way to kind of communicate that more. Mm-hmm. So, Gene, let's go to you. I'm curious. What's your history with the original game? And did you play it on PSP? And what made you eager to play it here, either for the first or second or third or whatever time on PS4 or PS5?
Yeah, the original game FF7 itself, actually, I played the Japanese import of it the year before it came out in the US. So I had no fucking idea what the hell was going on I had like a very slight knowledge of Japanese, so I knew, oh, huge materia. Okay, well, let's go get that thing then, and I knew how to say yes or no. But like when Aerith died, like I had no attachment to her whatsoever. Spoilers, by the way. I had no attachment to her whatsoever. I was just like, fuck, my healer's dead. What the fuck am I gonna do now? I can't believe they did that,
Yeah, and you spend time you spend time like leveling her up in mid.
Got her goddamn limit break,
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's annoying.
So, but and then I played later. It was. I've been such a huge Final Fantasy fan since the beginning. I played it on the ground floor, Final Fantasy I. So I did not play Crisis. I did not finish Crisis Core. I did play it on a PSP when I bought a PSP for my ex-fiance several years ago. Obviously, when it came out, and I bought Crisis Core. It was one of those things where I mostly just bought it for myself. But after the breakup, she just took the PSP, and I was like, "Fuck, okay, well." And then she took Crisis Core with her too because she ended up liking Crisis Core. So I never finished it. So I was super excited. So I just ended up watching the movies on YouTube, right? So I knew what how the story goes with Genesis and all that. But I was super excited. I was like, thank you for taking this out of the PSP graveyard. And because I just recently reacquired a PSP a couple months ago, and you can't buy Crisis Core digitally, And if I wanted to buy it on UMD, probably gonna have to spend a whole lot of money for it. So I was like, thank you, Square Enix, for re-releasing this. I finally get to experience it again, and I agree with you. This is more of a remake than The Last of Us Part 1.
Yeah, I totally. You're absolutely right. I mean, it totally is. It's very well put. Mm-hmm. And it's funny you were talking about playing Final Fantasy VII in Japanese. When I was in college, I was a senior, and IGN sent me a Japanese PS2 and Final Fantasy XII at the time. I think this was in 2006, maybe.
Yeah.
And I tried, although I couldn't. It was the only time I ever tried. I went to the library, Snell Library, and I printed out this whole Japanese strategy guide for it. And then all of these comparisons, like this is the symbol for tonic, this is the symbol for potion, and I legitimately thought in my pot-addled brain that with those documents, I would be able to play Final Fantasy XII and write the strategy guide early so it'd be ready to launch. And it was a disaster. Complete failure. One of my great failures at IGN.
Yeah, FF12 is so like opaque. Like it could be saying baby English to you, and like you still it'll still be like really hard because you'd be like, where the fuck am I supposed to go around this town?
Dude, I literally thought I would have a binder, and then it would be like, okay, here's a character, and then I was gonna go somehow find it in this book. Mm-hmm. Like I was going to go somehow just find that character, and then I was going to know.
Exactly.
I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. I ended up writing it later for the English version, but that was funny because that just reminded me of that. My only attempt at ever trying to do something that stupid.
Yeah, I had a Japanese friend playing FF7 with me at the time, but he didn't really know Japanese. So we were both just kind of like groping our way through FF7, trying to figure it out. We eventually did beat it. It was awesome. So
yeah, the only Japanese games I've ever played were like more rudimentary. Not really important to know what the text is, particularly during the PS1, and Dreamcast had a bunch of those as well. But anyway,
totally.
Dustin, curious, you're younger than us, so I'm curious what your original interaction was with this game. It came out 14 years ago, and which is crazy to think about. And I wonder if you have the same memories as I do, because I feel like I guess one of the things I wrote down that I want to kind of for us to get into here is this game nostalgic, or is it nostalgic because I played it or we played it in the past? There's something just inherently nostalgic about it. I'm wondering if that vibes with you as well, being someone who's younger and maybe didn't interact with it in the same way.
Yeah. So I remember, I guess PSP was what, 2005, 2006?
Yeah,
right?
It was 2005 in Japan, in the West, and 2004, I want to say, in Japan. But anyway, go on.
Sure. So I think that would have put me in about 4th or 5th grade when PSP came out. And I remember being so impressed by just talking with kids at school, being like, it's like a portable PS2. It's so cool. And I remember seeing Crisis Core when that came out, thinking, man, that looks so cool. We'd never seen anything like that. 3D graphics on the go. It was incredible. Unfortunately, I didn't have a PSP until way, way later. Probably about 5 years or something after that. And at that point, I don't know. At that time, I didn't end up playing Crisis Core. So this was interesting for me because I have really very little attachment to that original release. And it's been interesting seeing the feedback from people, especially when I've talked about playing it, is that people are asking like, well, what do you think about the voice acting? What do you think about this? And I'm like, I don't know. And I'm sure we'll get into that because that seems to be probably one of the most contentious aspects of this release. But as far as that nostalgia factor, Colin, that you're mentioning is, I think that that's absolutely there. And I think it just has to come down to like the gameplay, and not even the gameplay, I guess the structure, the way the levels are structured. The world doesn't necessarily feel very alive. There's not NPCs everywhere. And the way that the world, you can't even really call it an open world. It's like instanced areas of Midgar, has that old feeling to it that even if you've never played it before, if it's your first time, it might give you that refreshing feeling. I think I saw some people in our Discord say like, this is so refreshing to play a game that's just more simple. It's not like there's a huge open world map and all these places to go, and it's so focused on its mission structure. So it was really, really cool to finally play this game. And like you said, the quality of it, it's one of those, like, it didn't feel like Square Enix needed to go this hard on this game at all, but they really did make it something that just looks absolutely fantastic. I played it on PS5, and the 4K 60 and HDR, I was shocked often playing it. And I think one of the funniest comparisons is that you'll see the pre-rendered cutscenes that they up-resed for this game. In some ways, the gameplay of this game looks better than those pre-rendered cutscenes. It's
very cloudy and low res. It's there's only so much you can do. Like the display of the PSP was like, what was it, like 480 by 270 or something?
Pretty low.
Well, maybe even lower than that. And to me, it was refreshing because, and Gino, I'll go back to you. It's Square Enix has really surprised me the last few years, like genuinely. And Final Fantasy VII's treatment, beginning with the remake in 2020 and then into intermission or whatever the hell that thing was called, and now they're getting this out, and then Reunion obviously is this. Then they're going to get out the new Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 and all of the rest. It just shows me that actually you can go back and tweak things. Not everything is totally sacred. And as I said on a recent podcast, what I love about Final Fantasy VII in this new instance is that it's taking place parallel to Final Fantasy VII. Some people are troubled by some of the things that happen in this game. Not that Crisis Core story takes too many different turns in this new iteration, but people look at it and they think, do you mess with things too much? Do you tease too much of what happens to Cloud? Are you messing with Zack's relationship? And my whole answer is that this isn't the real Crisis Core. Just like the Final Fantasy VII remakes are not the real Final Fantasy VII. They're different. It's a totally different arc. And I don't know if that was intentional or if that's like some meta thing, but I feel like that's what they're doing. So I just wanted to throw it to you and ask you, has Square Enix surprised you recently? And did you go into Crisis Core with that in mind, that you could actually be surprised in a positive way? Because for me, I was actually blown away by how good it was. And like Dustin said, how hard they went in the paint. It's totally unnecessary. It's awesome. Love it.
Yeah. They surprised me. They continue to surprise me in how they've really nailed down the action RPG formula that they've been really fucking trying to get for like decades, you know? And they really nailed it in Final Fantasy VII Remake. You know, the game was so awesome because Cloud and Tifa herself felt like a fighting game character, like mixed with an RPG. It's amazing. It embarrassed a shooter. So it was really heartening to go back to Crisis Core, because I remember how the original game felt. It was a little stiff, but like the reason why I wanted to play it was because it's like, oh my god, it's Final Fantasy VII as a beat 'em up. That's what I've always wanted, like for my entire life since Final Fantasy VII came out. And then so now playing this one, it's like, okay, Zack's combat animations are so much more weighty. You know, when he swings his sword, you can really feel it. It feels a lot like the Buster Sword, like how heavy the Buster Sword felt in FF7 Remake. And it's like, this continues to give me confidence in how good Final Fantasy 16 is going to feel, and how Rebirth Remake Part 2 is going to feel, because they just reapply what they learned from Remake onto Reunion, and it worked great. And that was probably the most revelatory thing about playing Reunion. It's like, man, this when it comes to the moment-to-moment action, It definitely feels like a modern game. Obviously, a very nostalgic factor, like the music, like the twanging guitars and the mission structure. Yeah, the twanging guitars is like, oh my god, I'm totally playing a Japanese early 2000s game. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's very Wild Arms, which is cool. I have a real soft spot for that series, as people know. So you're totally right. That's why I was curious to kind of, and how do you feel about the question of nostalgia? Is it, because we're talking about it a little bit here, I'm so glad we touched on this early, because I feel like it's so fundamental to why I love it. Like there's something about that Loveless poster, that Loveless, and the music, and actually something Dustin was saying about how it's not very crowded and how it almost seems like a play. Mm-hmm. Like it's like, here are your characters and here's the stage right, and you're going here, and but it's really great. Like there's something about it where I'm like, this really touches me in a profoundly nostalgic way, and I don't think it's because the game is nostalgic. I think that they've made a nostalgic place in Midgar. Do you agree with that?
Totally. And I like you mentioning that it's a play, because I always looked at Final Fantasy, the old school pixel Final Fantasy games, as puppet shows. Because they have limited movement and you have to emote through that. And obviously, you see elements of that here in Crisis Core, where the animations are really the same, where crowd is just, Zack is just crossing his arms, or he would just kind of like wave his arms like this or whatever. They would just repeat those animations over again. And that's where the nostalgia factor comes in, because it's like, game characters don't move like this anymore, And I guess that's probably the most jarring thing when you look at the high res textures of the PS5. Mixed with animations like that, and it's like I seen some reviews point out like, oh, but the animations seem old. It's like, well, that's what the game was like back then, and like they've retained that essence, So again, that's kind of like where the nostalgia factor comes in. Like, yeah, Loveless. That's the setting. That's it's like Times Square for video games,
Right. That's totally well put. Yeah, an iconic vision from the very beginnings of Final Fantasy VII, and I think they play. Or I should even say prey on our nostalgia in this game intentionally from the get-go, because I love that Zack is involved in a simulation that is on the train platform where Final Fantasy VII begins. And I don't think that's spoiling for anyone, but I like that. So it's very familiar and very instantaneously recognizable, which is cool. Dustin, let's go to you. I want to get into the story a little bit. I was curious what you made of the game in connection to Final Fantasy VII, its lore and its rhythms. Just to catch people up, it's obviously about Zack Fair, who is a member of Soldier, which is the mega corporation Shinra's private military, and there are some other characters that we know from Final Fantasy VII in here as well, including some of the Turks, specifically Sang, and they introduced Cisne in this game. I don't think she's actually in Final Fantasy VII, the regular one. I could be wrong. And then it's about Genesis and Angel and these characters that we've never really met, plus Sephiroth and kind of his rise to evilldom. I love the scene of him that we obviously know. We see it later. Him surrounded by all the books in the library at the table and like kicking Zack out as he's reading all the shit. It's just fucking awesome, iconic stuff. What do you think of the plot?
It's weird. There's a lot of aspects I really like, and then there's other parts that I don't like as much, particularly like I think about at the beginning, I was kind of not super into Zack. I thought he was kind of annoying. It's like, dude, why are you doing squats in the middle of the room for no reason?
Awesome. Yeah.
Which eventually by the end, I kind of liked him doing the squats. Like, I don't know, like something about his character is like he doesn't come off like morally gray. He wants to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. He wants to help his friends. And I guess, yeah, he really grew on me throughout it. And it's interesting, and I would love to throw this to Gene, because I know I saw you tweet about this a little bit, is that when I was playing it and you get into, okay, this guy's a clone, and this guy is a clone of a clone, and it's this guy in this guy's body, I was thinking, it's like, I know why people that were reviewing this in 2022 thought that Nomura wrote it, because it had that same, like, you've played Kingdom Hearts and all the Xehanorts and stuff like that. It has some of that similar shade to it, where there were certain point towards the end when you're getting into the Genesis and Jill story. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And I watched a video today going through everything again, and I got a little more out of it, but it was one of those things where that story of, I guess, that trio, we'll say Sephiroth and Jill and Genesis, adds a lot of flavor to the overall lore with Genova and stuff like that. But ultimately, it is, I don't want to say it feels like fanfic, because it's not, but it was added on after, right? So in some ways, I think it's cool. I think it's a bit convoluted at points. But ultimately, when you look at the game as a whole and the cracks it fills in for Final Fantasy VII, I'm super into it. And I'm curious, most of all, and I think this will probably be a huge part of our conversation, is that now that Remake is kind of going off the established rails in a good way, are we going to see some of these characters return or show up in other ways? So yeah, I don't know. When I say that it's a mixed bag, it sounds negative, but overall I feel very positive. I just felt it a few times. I was like, oh, this is a little bit more out there than I feel like the core Final Fantasy VII.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And by the way, I mean, Nojima, who wrote the original Final Fantasy VII and wrote Kingdom Hearts, or co-wrote it anyway. So it's no surprise that, they share some of this DNA. I actually dig the camp, and we'll get into that in a little while. But do you have anything to say about that, Gene? Because I know Dustin was pitching that over to you.
Oh yeah, I love the camp. I loved it. Cloud was always, Zack was always doing squats in FF7, so his little 3D sprite. So like it's just so awesome to continue to see that, and it's so great to hear that you ended up liking that, because like you get used to it. Like he's like that really annoying positive guy that you don't think that you're gonna like, but then you hang around with him long enough, and it's like, fuck, I love this guy, man.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's so reliable, he's so dependable, and the whole thing about Angio and Genesis, and maybe we'll break it to later. But it's like the funny thing about Crisis Core, the story is that shows that almost everybody in Soldier was a fucking lunatic. Like the Soldier program makes you lose your goddamn mind. And Zack was the only person who kind of like retained like a really strong sense of self, and that's what kind of shines through in the game, and that's why the ending, I'm sure we'll talk about that more later, but that's why the ending is so powerful, and that's why Zack's story in FF7, the flashback, was so powerful too. And just to see it elaborated upon in Crisis Core is just amazing. I'm so glad I got to experience the whole thing, like legitimately, and just not watching it like through YouTube summaries.
Yeah, that's great. I totally agree. It's hard to like. Dagan and I on Knockback did the Uncharted trilogy recently, and I've played those games several times each. I've platinumed them on PS3 and PS4. I was like, I'm not playing these games again. So when we were preparing for them, I went and watched like 5-hour YouTube videos of like all of the cutscenes and like little like fast forwarding through all the gameplay just so you have some context. And I'm like, it reminds me of what it was, but it's not the same as playing. No. And yeah, I think it's important to experience it as well. But I think one of the fun things that I think, and it's what you said, Dustin, that I think we have to embrace about this, and I wanted to actually get a more literal answer from you guys to see if you think I'm right. Is this an alternate version of Crisis Core? Just like Remake and Rebirth are alternate versions of Final Fantasy VII? Or is this supposed to be the Crisis Core?
It doesn't seem like it. It seems like this is the Crisis Core, because I saw a lot of commentary being like, well, why didn't they do anything with Remake? And it's like, you guys know that Remake is a sequel, not like a remake of the first game, right? So it's like Crisis Core was on a completely different timeline than what Remake would be on.
Right.
So
that's what's because to me, the reason I asked this, Gene, is because people ask, like, well, there are tons of gameplay changes. Obviously, the game is remade entirely graphically, but they didn't change anything with the story. And I was like, but they changed all the models, and to me, I feel like that was some sort of subtle, nod to say, like, actually, the Crisis Core games both exist. They're not very different from each other. Those chapters of what happened don't really change compared to what changes when you see the wisps and all that in Final Fantasy VII Remake that represent all the different changes. I don't know, just something I just dropped my pen. Something I was thinking about as I was playing it. I don't know, because I just felt like it was strange for them to not change anything. It almost felt intentional. In other words, like, no, we're going to just change the character models. Yeah. And the voice acting, of course, which they changed as well. And I dug that they did that. But in other words, if to play the original Final Fantasy VII would require you to play the PSP version of Crisis Core to get the prequel. To play the remakes require you to play this version just to have the symmetrical version of them. I don't know. Maybe that's just a little too hokey for what really happened.
I mean, it gives good context for Zack because, like, you know, like the whole story behind Zack was it optional in FF7? I forget. It wasn't optional, right?
No, it's not optional.
It's not optional, but like it wasn't very elaborated upon. So, and then, you know, for people who never fucking played FF7 at all, and then they just dove into remake, they'd be like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" At the end, you know. So it's like, okay, well, here's the story of the original story of what was supposed to happen.
Yeah, the optional stuff is in Nibelheim, I think, in Final Fantasy VII is when you go back, right? Because you can go and get Vincent, which they allude to in the basement, which is dope.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I wanted to, since we're talking about camp, I wanted to get a little bit more into this, and we'll get a little bit more into Zack as well. Karai wrote into us on Patreon. I wanted to get some of you guys involved. Said, "Hey, C&D, long-time listener, first-time writing. Welcome. I'm going to be the odd one out and ask, am I the only one that enjoyed the camp and hokiness of this game? While I understand that a lot of the concepts and writing in this game can be hard to swallow, I also think that this helps bring some levity into what, in all honesty, is a pretty bleak story about loss and how it affects those around it. Never forget those goofy moments from the OG Final Fantasy VII. Anyway, hope you guys had a great holiday season and glad to hear you're back." Thank you, Karai, for writing in. I wanted to stay on this for a moment because what I've realized about the things that I love is that they share this campiness that I think is actually a feature of some of my favorite fiction, not all of my favorite fiction. For instance, The Last of Us is not campy at all. You know, I don't even think BioShock's campy. It's weird, but it's not campy.
Yeah.
Things like, so when I say campy, it's like when I think about Final Fantasy VI and this idea of melding cyberpunk and fantasy, and you have these fucking huge machines and stuff. It's very anime. And G.I. Joe, we mentioned earlier, completely campy. It's about a fucking terrorist organization, but they're all like weird, right? They all dress in these weird outfits. It's totally nonsense. Or like what people love about, and I'm not a huge fan, but Marvel superheroes, DC superheroes, that's camp. And it's fun. And I think sometimes you have to embrace it. So Dustin, I want to hear from you about this. Do you embrace the camp generally? And do you embrace the camp here? I think the answer to the first question is obviously yes, but I want to hear from you.
Well, yeah, definitely. I'm super into campy stuff. I mean, my second favorite anime is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is nothing but camp, like purely. And Colin, you're saying you're such a fan of campy stuff, yet you're a hater of Kingdom Hearts, which is just as more campy than this game.
Disney. I mean, that's like a black hole for me. I just can't.
That's just like a multiplier on the camp because it makes it make less sense even more, which makes it more awesome.
True. You're totally right. Yeah. That is a factor of it that I would enjoy. There's a camp. It doesn't matter. I don't like Thundercats. You know what I mean? Or He-Man.
Sure.
Right. But like those are also campy, but that to each his own that's where I go for that. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I love that aspect of it. I think that sometimes with campy stuff, it can get pushed a little far. Like, for example, when in this game with Genesis, and I don't know if this is just campy or just annoying. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up and just speak normally. Stop. Like, I was getting so annoyed by them. Like, just fucking talk like a normal person, which I understand this Final Fantasy and no one is normal. Like, bro, stop. So, but it's funny because while I was annoyed, like, that is a memorable aspect of this game and a memorable aspect of that character. And maybe it is a little annoying at points, but it's not like an actual negative to me. It's like, it's one of those like flavor aspects to the game. So yeah, I'm all in on campy stuff. And I'm curious hearing from you guys, because I know that voice acting can be a part of like delivery on how something is like actually serious or it has like a campy flair to it. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but the voice actor for Zack changed. And I know that was a big negative aspect for a lot of people. And so do you think that helped? Did that hurt? I'm just curious where that fits into that whole picture.
Yeah, to me, I was indifferent to it because I just didn't know what they thought was going to happen. You know, we have a whole cast of characters that play these characters in this new thing. They're remaking and kind of putting it into this new arc. So they would keep the old Zack. We're going to see. Can I spoil Final Fantasy VII Remake here? I don't know if I really should. I guess I won't.
we can put a mark on the.
It doesn't matter. I don't need to say what I was going to say anyway. Needless to say, we're going to hear him again, right? So, and to me, it goes into this whole theory. I mean, it's not even a theory. It's just this weird idea I have that it's just supposed to be a subtle difference, right? All these subtle differences. And that's maybe a less subtle difference, but I have to be honest with you, as someone who played the original Crisis Core for probably 100+ hours, I don't even fucking remember what that guy sounds like. And in fact, when I was playing the game for the first couple hours, I had to stop and go on YouTube and just watch gameplay from the original, because I'm like, what is going on here? It's totally different. And so I just feel like that's part and parcel with the production, the kind of the ethos of the production. Like, this is what we're going to do. Everything's changing. So yeah, I didn't mind it too much. How about you, Gene? Did this trouble you?
I didn't mind it. I went back, of course, to watch the original voice actor, and I get what people are saying. Like, he's a lot more serious, because this actor, apologies, I never bothered to find out his name, but he sounds like fucking Sonic the Hedgehog. He's like, oh yeah, and which makes the contrast with Genesis just reading fucking poetry all day like even more hilarious. So it's like I'm watching a human Sonic the Hedgehog surrounded by like 3 edgelord Shadow the Hedgehog guys, like the edgiest motherfuckers. And Jill, who's just like this romantic like crybaby, and Genesis, who's like this prissy poetry man, and just Sephiroth and everything that he brings along to the table. And then here's just Zack saying like, Sephiroth, why did you burn down the town? Or and Jill, what the fuck are you talking about? And Genesis, shut up. And it's like him just saying that just only adds to like how out of place he is in his whole story, and then how different he is from the other characters, from Cloud, who's also another edgelord, and he's trying to say like, Cloud, don't be like those guys, man. don't be like those guys. Be like me. Be a hero like me.
I looked up the name for you, by the way. It's Caleb Pierce is the new actor.
Yeah. Good for him, man. I'm glad to have him as Zack, because he's basically Sonic the Hedgehog as a man,
Yeah. Good thing Chris is in here. He's be having an existential crisis.
Exactly.
And speaking of Zack, I wanted to linger on him for a minute. Jose Mendoza wrote into us and said, "Hey CD," and Gene, of course. "Is it me, or did you find Zack's one-liners annoying and very kiddish? The story for the most part is very mature and may be hard for kids to swallow, so I'm trying to wrap my head around why they made Zack seem so childish with the one-liners. Am I just becoming an old grouch, or is this something shared from you all as well? Thank you, and can't wait to see you all in Texas. We'll see you then." Jose, thank you for writing in. So I wanted to just say, to answer this question, I think that there is an intent to it. I love the way you have analyzed it, Gene, to say that it's another differentiator between him and everyone else, making him stand apart. The thing about Zack is that I think that dissonance, and Gene, you hit the nail right in the head when we started talking about it, that dissonance is at the heart of the character and why he matters, because he's doing these weird squats and he's very focused and he's very rah-rah, and he's working for the man.
Yeah.
He's totally buttoned up for the man, and then veers off that course. And I love that that's represented by someone who sounds a little different, acts a little different. I mean, I think that the scene with him and Cloud with the sniper part of the game, I think that part is awesome. It's like Zack's totally, all that matters is his character, not anything else about him.
Exactly.
And at the end of the game, obviously, we see that as well. So I dig that personally. And I think that it fits nicely. It makes me interested because obviously the Final Fantasy VII Remake ends differently than that period of Final Fantasy VII ended in the original game. And so the idea of this character finding his way into that world is tantalizing as hell, I think.
Exactly. And like, he's the kind of guy that, he doesn't even really know Cloud all that well, but he drags Cloud's like unconscious comatose corpse across the planet to go so he can go back to his girlfriend. But he's like, I'm not leaving this guy behind. Like we're in it together. Who does that? Like I don't know if I would even do that. Like I'd be at a certain point I'd be like, sorry, Cloud, like I gotta go back, man. So like imagine if Zack Fair like was charged to take Ellie across to to Utah or whatever.
That would be awesome, Zach and Ellie.
Yeah, like think about how that story would end up. Like he'd be like, "All right, Ellie, let's go. Ellie, let's hear another pun." Like it'd be so awesome.
Oh yeah, they would have carved you the joke books in no time flat.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And so, and I like his humanity. And I think it's really important. He doesn't know Cloud very well, and Cloud is no one, right? Like ultimately, he becomes this proxy of some sort of normalcy. Like he wants to protect the innocent. It's that simple, in my opinion. I think it's neat. And you know what else is clarified in here? And Dustin, I'm curious if you feel this. I feel like, and I kind of forgot about this. Crisis Core kind of solves the love triangle in Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? Because it aims Cloud squarely at Tifa and Zack squarely at Aerith, right? As opposed to there being any questionable, and Jesse's in there obviously in the new game, but did you feel that at all?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this was new information for me, even though I feel like I knew a lot about Crisis Core. I knew that she was in it, but I totally didn't know about their romantic relationship. Though I gotta say, hopefully she grew up a little bit, because the way she was so ungrateful for the flower cart. What's up with that? She's just like, oh, I want a nicer one. I was like,
did you do that? Did you make her the nicest one? Like
no, I didn't, because she wasn't grateful for the first one. So
you can make her like a series. I think 3 more of them. I did it because it's like a trophy.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
I gotta
but
do that.
Yeah, you can make if you talk to certain people at specific times. There's a really great walkthrough on Power Picks, as there always is, that will bring you to every. If you just follow it again. People think that these walkthroughs are like spoiling the game. They're not. It's basically just telling you, when you hit this thing, make sure you do this. When this happens, make sure you do this, and just an order. And there's a sequence of events you can do to build all these new carts for Aerith, or Aerith. I'll always call her Aerith. That's always going to be my default. And I also wanted to give a shout out, and I looked up her name. I wanted to make sure I got it right. Brianna White.
Brianna White, yeah.
She's awesome. Like, I think she's great. There were some people complaining about her. I remember when Final Fantasy VII Remake was first shown, and then, or we first heard from her, and then she was in the game. But I think she does a great performance.
She was fantastic in Remake. Are you kidding me? She said shit in it. She says shit in it,
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
She's great. So I just want to give her a shout out.
I actually interviewed. I totally give her a shout out too. I interviewed her right around the Remake launch time. She's a wonderful person. And she also has a YouTube channel. So go check it out. Strange Rebel Gaming.
Nice. Please do. All right, let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. I'm curious how you guys square this up. To me, as I'm a checkbox gamer, everyone knows that, right? I love trophies. I love my Far Cry games and my Infamous games and whatever, not that that's all that I play, but they're very satisfying. I need one every so often, several times a year. And this is a checkmark game, man. And it's made for PSP, so it really has that bite-sized approach that I think translates totally fine to console. In fact, Jacob Marcus Downing wrote into us and said, "Happy New Year, folks." Colin, coming from someone who has never played Crisis Core before this release, do you feel that the core design of the game is somewhat hampered being on a home console? From the chapters all being small time jumps apart where you have to fill in the details, to the mission structure and pacing being so clearly designed for small periods of playtime. This was something that really stuck out to me. Still enjoyed the game, but the portable influence design choices were always in the back of my head. They're definitely there, but I love it. There are games where it's like, just do this and then do this and watch the percentage go up 1 percentage point, and then do this and here's a check mark, and then do this and here's a trophy. That shit's awesome, especially in the confines of a Final Fantasy VII story. So I dig it. Gene, talk to me about the gameplay. Before we even talk about combat, do you like the structure of the game?
I love the structure of the game, and it reminds me of what you were saying about God of War Ragnarok. Sorry, I couldn't join you guys for
you were missed.
Spoilercast, but I listened to the whole thing, and a complaint you often had was, just let me fucking play the game, just let me fight. And here is Final Fantasy Crisis Core Reunion, just giving you that. Here is a place where you fight some monsters, and you go fight them, and then there's some treasure chests along the way. Go fucking open those treasure chests. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. There's no squeeze throughs or anything like that. It's just like, you got the map, fight the monsters, open the treasure chest, get experience. That's it. So it's like I am getting my meat and potatoes gameplay like through Crisis Core. I love the structure of it. Would I want it for every game? No, but like for me, just like you said, like I don't know if I would call myself a checkbox gamer, but I do need those games every once in a while. And Crisis Core Reunion like definitely filled that is filling that role, because I'm only level 55 right now. So I'm trying to I like getting to level 99 in every Final Fantasy game I ever play.
Nice.
So and it's taking me a while to get through this one, because there are so many missions to get through it. It's actually pretty hard. It's actually pretty challenging.
Yeah, it is hard. I think I stalled out. I'd stall my cross media bar, so maybe I'll go play it again. But I stalled out at like 55 or 60% with mission completion, which is pretty high actually. Because yeah, you're right. Like the missions, 7-star, 8-star missions, these things get really annoying, one hit really kills and all this. You really have to be sophisticated with your materia and all the rest. So I think I'd like to go back, but because when I first started playing it, I was like, oh, I'll definitely get the platinum in this. But then I even tried to beat it just on hard, and I was getting my ass kicked. So I was like, I'm nowhere near ready to do this. I'm gonna have to grind literally 40 levels and do all this. So maybe one day. Dustin, what do you think about the structure of the game? Does it speak to you in any specific way? For people, in case you're listening, and this really isn't for people that haven't played the game, but just in case you are, there's a linear 10-chapter story that you go through. You can't backtrack or anything like that generally. But in the background is a very well-designed UI that allows you to just access shops and missions and blah, 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 on your phone and all this. It's just so snappy and fun. It's like what every game I was playing and just feeling like I want every game to be this snappy, I guess.
Oh God, yeah.
What I really liked about that format, you mentioned the story chapters and then the missions, is that it was nice when I sat down to play the game, I could kind of choose what I wanted to do, or switch between both. If I was listening to a podcast or something, then that was like perfect time. Grind out some missions. Maybe you're playing the story and it's getting a little harder than you would like. Then you can just hop into some missions, which that's something that I think when you're playing an RPG and you need to grind, I'm the type that I have to figure out the absolute best place to grind at that moment. Like I have to min max it. And what was nice about this is that just do this. You just got to do these and then work your way up. And that's all you got to do. Got to figure out where to go or which monster or whatever. So it's kind of nice, like that was just kind of laid out. Again, I wouldn't want that for every game, but it was nice to have that dynamic. And the person who wrote in mentioned, is it bad that this is a home console release and it has this format? And I think that comes into what your expectations are for this game. I'm willing to bet that there were a lot of people that picked up this game and had the wrong expectations of this being like Remake. And it's not, but that's okay. It's something totally different. If you have the expectation of this is a PSP game it's meant to be portable, but they made it look and play way better, then it was awesome. I was actually shocked when I saw a lot of people, industry people, saying they didn't think it was very good or it was dated. I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Like it is dated, but not in the right ways, not the bad ways. So I like that. Honestly, it makes me wish that we could have other one-off titles of big series that have formats like this. I'm sure there are some, but I can't think of any right now. But yeah, I felt like it was really refreshing.
I mean, Final Fantasy VII itself was one of the first series. Dirge of Cerberus, which was even before this, was, they constantly, or not constantly, but they were thinking of ways to spin it off in different ways, a little bit ahead of their time in some ways. But here's the thing about the system of combat is that nothing requires too much of a buy-in. If you're going to go try something out, you're not going to waste too much of your time. I will tell you guys this, though. There is a mission where you have to kill 1,000 soldiers. Did you guys do this mission?
I did that last night, actually. God,
and I died. I couldn't believe it.
Jesus Christ.
I couldn't believe. I was probably an hour into this thing or something, and I was just on autopilot, and I just died. I was like, oh my God, I cannot even stand this.
Yeah.
So I did have a meltdown at that point. That required a lot of buy-in. But generally speaking, you're interacting. You can finish these fights in 30 seconds. It's very easy, and in the original PSP game, you could just stay on the edges of the maps and avoid all the fights. If you want to do that, you can still do that. It's stupid because you're not going to level up, but you can do that to just get to where you want to go, try it out, see if it's a one-hit kill or whatever, and then go back and when you're sufficiently grinded. But what I don't like when systems get too deep. And one thing I think that this game does really well is the systems just aren't very deep. It's like materia fusion, material leveling, lots to do there, and then some limited accessorizing with your equipment. And I actually wrote down and I was curious if you guys had any answer to this. I wrote down what my materia system ended up basically consistently being by the end of the game. Faraga, Thundaga, Blizzaga, Cura on the face buttons. And then MP up ++, HP up ++. And then equipment system, Carbon Bangle, which was 40% HP increase. Aegis Armlet, which is +20 to Vitality and Spirit with no stun. Diamond Gloves, +10 to Attack and Magic with no silence. And then Dragon Armlet halves all element.
I literally have the same accessories equipped.
Yeah, because you got it. The stun and silence are devastating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you got to do something about those.
They're so frustrating.
What kind of spells were you slinging? What kind of materia were you using?
I was using Hellfire Raga because the instant death is cool, and I like Thundaga Blade just because I think it's cool to have the fucking Buster Sword shoot lightning, and high jump just because like I'm such a Final Fantasy IV nerd. And
Kane.
Kane. Like come on, man. Like every Dragoon.
You're speaking
awesome,
my language.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
So I have high jump and Kiraga, and I think that's it. And then the other ones are either attack plus because I like being a glass cannon, but then I realized that only gets me so far. So now I have like vitality and SP or whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean.
Skill points. I guess that's my whole thing is that I tried to have a balance of skills and spells so that I would use both.
Yeah.
But then I realized that I wasn't really hurting for magic points at some point. Like I love that. This is new to this version of the game, I think, is that you get scored after every fight. I don't think that was in the original one. And so if you like get through a fight without killing anybody, you get a bunch of your magic points and stuff back. So you can just game it constantly to just never be out of magic. And once I figured that out, the reason I didn't go to Kiraga, instead stay with Kira, was it just used so much MP compared to...
Actually, maybe that's my problem. Yeah.
But yeah, my hope is if I keep playing, I can eventually abandon MP up ++ and HP up ++ because I'll be maxed out at 999 and 9,999, and therefore I can put the other ones in there. Dustin, what did you mess with your materia?
I can't remember my equipment at all, but I really liked there's SP attacks that are elemental based, where he basically does like a spin attack, and so basically I leveled those up and gotten the better versions of that, and so at some points it almost felt like I had broken the game because I could get into a loop where I was hitting enemies and they would like stagger, and I'd be able to do it again and again. I don't know if I just had enough SP that a lot of times, I don't know about most fights, but a lot of fights I would hit the roll where your SP was unlimited or it would refill it. And so I could manage most of these fights just alternating between these three different elemental base attacks, which was really fun. Ultimately, though, you can't do that for all of them. There was, I think, some of the like summon battles where they're like off screen, or not off screen, but out of the battlefield a little bit. So I would have my normal magic attacks binded as well. But those spin attacks, don't sleep on them. They're really good.
And speaking of
the dog blade, that's what I got.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I
was going to say, just before I forget, with summons, dude, the animations are like
so good.
They're good.
I remember my brother Dagan when Final Fantasy VII came out, and we were obsessed with like Knights of the Round and all these things. We would literally start the game up just to cast it and then watch it. And when you go back and look at it, it looks like shit, but it was just so exciting and interesting. And I love this idea. It's absurd. There's a big dragon who's taking control of the moon and using it as a laser and shooting a laser into the thing, and it just says 9999 over your character or over the enemy. It's just so fun. I think that's what this game reminded me. It's like, this is fun. This is just fun, and it's entertainment, and a game can just be that. There's a lot of sentimentality, a lot of nostalgia, a lot of importance to what is going on too. But I think the summons in some way really invoke the fun and just the craziness of it all. What is it? What is that? It's like you're talking about Final Fantasy IV, Gene. It's like when you get Rydia, and she's like so much stronger. That's what's so fun about her. And Porum and Palom later on is that they're children, and they are so much more powerful than everyone else. You know, and they cast this amazing magic, and it doesn't really make much sense. And I dig that. I love that a lot.
I'm glad you brought up the summons, because I was just like, this is all summons need to be. It's just a fucking badass, crazy ass cutscene. That's okay. That's cool.
A comet just hitting the planet. It's like I always wondered, like, what is this? What is this? So, but where did this idea come from? You know, it's actually this idea of even doing something like this is a Final Fantasy idea.
Yeah, that's true.
And
who does that? I never thought about that. It's like, because I've been so fucking used to Final Fantasy. It's been all my life, and I never realized how strange summons are. You know, where it's like, but Zeta Bahamut or Bahamut Zero is going to destroy the planet, and then the next sequence, the planet's fine. You know?
Right, exactly. It's like some sort of, it's like a mirage or something. It's cool. I don't know. I dig it. And I feel like Rydia is the first to really do it in Final Fantasy, right? Because are there summoners in 3? I don't think so. Dude, by the way, the 40th anniversary coming up, they're releasing those finally on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, or actually just on PlayStation 4, I think, and other consoles. And
Switch too, yeah.
And Switch, I'm playing them all 6 of them. Can't wait.
I was awake when Square Enix tweeted out that they were limited.
What was that all about? That was so weird.
Yeah, it was fucked up. And it's like clearly they were clearly like, fuck the rest of the world. This is for our Japanese audience, right? But I was awake and I was able to secure the anniversary edition to fucking like $250, but it's like whatever, you know. Awesome. I love Final Fantasy. So.
I just think 4 and 6 alone worth their weight in gold. I really love 1 and 2. I haven't played either of them since the PSP versions, and before that the PS1 version. So it's gonna be fun to go back to those. But anyway, what's interesting about those is that those were ported by Toes, the same company that ported and did a lot of the work on this version of the game, and also did Valkyrie Profile Lenneth on PSP, which was just ported to PS4. So they're a good company.
Wow, really good company. These guys rule.
Yeah, and they worked on Scarlet Nexus too, which I thought was really cool.
Oh, no shit. Scarlet Nexus was also fucking cool.
Yeah, it was. It was super cool. It was a little half baked, but it was really cool.
Yeah, it was good. It was fine. You know,
I'd like to see a sequel to that.
Yeah,
I did beat that one. Okay, I wanted to ask you guys. I brought it up earlier, and Gene, we'll stick with you. I wanted to talk a little bit about the UI. I think this is one of the greatest parts of the game. I often labor on this idea that UI is getting so bad, and Chris really feels that way too. Where it's like, how can it be this bad? How can it be? And I feel like with this game, not only did they unify its aesthetic with Final Fantasy VII Remake's aesthetic, which shares an aesthetic with the mainline Final Fantasy JRPG style games, but that you just get everywhere and get to what you want just instantaneously. Oh, you want to shop? Okay, you don't have to walk there. That's not fun. And our game's about fun. So here's the shop. Oh, you want to go to the mission? You don't have to worry. Just here's that. You want to save? You know, you want to. I just love that. I just dig that. You want to leave the battle? You want to leave the map? You want to? It's just like no problems. It's really a masterclass actually in user interface and in design and instantaneous design and getting you to where you want to be. I'm wondering if you share that thought and if you wanted to opine a little bit about this.
Absolutely. I think it speaks to the importance of the UI, especially in Final Fantasy, that the biggest controversy about the Pixel remasters is the UI, the font of it, you know? People are so used to seeing the classic Final Fantasy font with the jagged edges that you just hate how clean and boring it looks, because that font is important for us to kind of see. Okay, here's save is, here's config, here's summons, here's items. You know, and yeah, absolutely, modern UI is crazy. Like I share what you guys talked about with God of War Ragnarok. I cannot wait until New Game Plus comes out, because I refuse to play that game until New Game Plus comes out, so I can play it with all the shit, and I never have to fucking open the menu up ever again. You know, like it's just like all the skills are there, all my equipment is there. I could just play the fucking game and never have to open up that goddamn menu ever again. You know?
Yeah, it's so laboring in that game. It's. I know some people like that level of depth. I want to go in the other direction. I think a little bit. Have a few things. But
yeah,
let's not.
You
get
didn't do
too
anything.
deep.
You didn't do anything with the depth. Because you don't feel that much more powerful as you're increasing Kratos' power. You're just kind of the game just seems to be scaling just along right with you.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
Mm-hmm.
Dustin, we touched on this a little bit, but I was curious if you wanted to throw in anything about the UI. And one of the fun things I think about the UI in the game too, from a meta level, or I guess from a gameplay level, if you want to immerse yourself as Zack Fair, is it's presumably being done, or a lot of it, on his flip phone, which I find really fun. And I think it's a really cool thing that they didn't change that, because Micah and I she was watching me play it quite a bit, and I noted to her, I'm like, that's something they could have changed totally. And yeah. I think people would have understood that we kind of interact with things differently and stuff, and they didn't. And I thought that was cool, part of the nostalgia factor of the game, but also suggested something about this tight UI, something just instantaneous and simple. Did that resonate with you?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like this is something that Square has gotten really good at, particularly this game and Final Fantasy VII Remake. I feel like also, I guess this game doesn't remind me of Kingdom Hearts UI, but it just kind of all meshes together in these like really clean menus. You know where you're going, you know what you're doing. And yeah, this one, I'm trying to remember. I think that maybe if I only had any complaint is that sometimes there's like a ticker on the side that brings up all like, here's all the stuff you bought, here's that. And it can get a little crowded, but that's just me being nitpicky. But yeah, I think that the other thing, I don't know what the solution would be, but there was a few times where I wanted to use an item, but it was on the other side of the item bar. And I'm like, fuck, like trying to move over to select it. Sure. But yeah, there's no real solution to that if you have a bunch of different items. So
yeah, I feel like generally speaking, it's pretty clean.
Yeah.
Even in combat. And I like the digital mind wave, the DMW too. I totally had forgotten about that feature until I started playing the game again. I was like, oh, that's right. There's like this roulette thing that's just constantly going. I dug it, Gene, because there was a couple of differences made that I remember from the original. And one of the big ones is that you could store the things you were earning, which I thought was cool. You didn't have to use it right away. And I also remember that it was a big problem in Crisis Core that no one wanted to use that shit because you couldn't skip a lot of those animations. So when you used Bahamut Zero or whatever, and he's destroying shit, you have to watch the whole thing. They made nice little quality of life changes in that regard. My only problem with the DMW is that it's tethered to the leveling system. I wish that there was a more organic leveling system as opposed to earning these points that you would just, for people that might not even be aware, because it's not very obvious, you level up in combat. Like you're earning these points but you have to do it. You have to actually
them. You're banking them. Yeah.
Right. You have to like actually leveling up is a thing that happens in combat, and it's a little weird. Maybe one level too deep. But what did you think of the DMW?
I enjoyed it. It was something that I didn't remember much from the PSP version because I didn't play it that much. But like with the action combat, with the more tactile combat that they have, like it just kind of throws in more chaos into the fighting. And it never felt necessary, like, which is why so many people seem to have skipped it back then, because like, like a good well-placed Thundaga blade would probably hit harder than a Bahamut Zero, So it's like, why would you want to fire a Bahamut Zero? Whereas now it's like, okay, well, I got Bahamut, I might as well fire him off now, skip it, and then continue to wail on this enemy again,
Totally.
But yeah, it's confusing. I don't really quite understand it, but I mean, like I'm also okay with that because I'm getting by just fine without it,
How did you feel about that subsystem, Dustin?
Yeah, I liked it in that I liked that I didn't have to think about it. It was kind of one of those times where it's like you're fighting a battle and it's like, oh, sweet, I've got a summon now, or I can bring in some chocobos, which the chocobo ones were awesome. That summon. So it was one of those things where it almost felt like, I don't know, in like normal Remake or other Final Fantasy games, you're kind of juggling that aspect on top of your other systems as far as summons and different buffs and debuffs and stuff like that. And for this, it was just kind of was like a little extra while you're playing. It's like, oh, nice. I got the right roulette match. I didn't have to think about it. Now I just get a nice bonus. There's no negative aspect to it. So that was cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like using Setzer's roulette in Final Fantasy VI where you could actually kill your party if you get the wrong one, which
I totally forgot about that.
Which I thought was super cool. Like you could actually hurt yourself and like poison yourself, and yeah, it's which is pretty cool. So there was always like a risk, which I thought was part of being a gambler and part of what made that character cool. But this game seems to, in my opinion, just to maximize fun with a capital F in terms of, you might not think it's fun, but that's what the idea is, to just say like, let's have fewer barriers. Let's get to the meat of the situation, have all these different bells and whistles going off, kind of like being in a casino and they're all, it's all good. Everything's fun and everything's popping. I love it. I think it's really cool. And the DMW is an interesting idea. Prove your honor to me. I just thought that was the funniest thing. It's like, what does that even mean? Prove your honor to me. I don't know what that really means.
Yeah.
All right. And the final thing I wanted to ask, or I guess we have a couple more things, is what do you guys think of the mail, like the email system, as being kind of the conduit for a story? Did you delve into any of that at all? I actually got the trophy for getting all of the mail, which was cool. So I did try to take the time to read it. There's a lot of weird shit in there. If you take the time to read it, it's very foreboding and strange. I find all the fan club stuff too. And I don't know if you guys interacted with any of the fan clubs, but that's just so, I don't know what the commentary is there.
What's the story with the mom and the kid?
There's that's right. There's a at one point, did you do the side quest, Gene, where it's like there's a mother that's a fan of one of the characters and has a fan club and is basically has abandoned her child to follow this person around, and then you have to go convince this person that you got to take care of your kid. You can't be like, the Genesis super fan. Very weird.
I actually didn't get that one.
Yeah.
I got to look for that one. Jeez,
yeah.
There's so much to miss in this game, which is crazy.
Yeah, I think what's a little frustrating to some people about that is you have to there is a lot to miss.
Yeah.
If you don't do things at very specific times, you can miss entire mission arcs. And I've read things about how people like get to 98% complete missions and they're like, oh shit, I've locked myself out. I can't even do some of these missions, and how frustrating that is. So I really encourage people to use a walkthrough.
That does
make
suck.
Sure you don't miss
it's like, you got to do that in New Game Plus and do it all over again, which is terrible. So
exactly. So I really think these spoiler-free power pick style walkthroughs are awesome because they just make sure you don't miss anything. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not cheating if you do that. What else here? I did like the email. I did like the email system. Kind of reminded me of Death Stranding.
Definitely. Another game with amazing UI. I think for me, half the reason why I love Death Stranding so much is because the UI was fucking so like such a pleasure to like just like fuck with, like the sounds. Like Kojima is just a master of like Kojima and his team are just masters of just producing like excellent, snappy, crunchy menus with like crispy sounds and everything like that. And that's kind of what Square Enix is really good too, and the emos were great. I obviously I didn't read all of them, but I also like the whole side story with Yuffie and getting the leaked email addresses from a blonde guy and alluding to how Rufus is actually like been helping out like the Wutai and the Avalanche like resistance, which is like super fucking cool. So
definitely, and we get to see a little bit more. Well, I mean, Yuffie's technically an optional character in Final Fantasy VII, so this kind of forces the player to, although it's optional too, I think the first mission isn't optional when you meet her, and it forces you to like more confront what Shinra is doing there. Because it's kind of, I don't know how they're planning on going into it in this, because I didn't play Intermission yet, or the whatever that DLC is.
Oh, you should. It's so good.
Well, when leading up to Rebirth, I'm going to play the whole thing again on PS5, because I played it on PS4.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And at that point, I'll just do all of that. And so I'd be interested to know, and some of this stuff's probably already known, how they're going to tie in Yuffie and Wutai and Shinra's kind of war against them into the game. And so this kind of is a nice, interesting confrontation of it. And Yuffie's obviously younger, so you're seeing her at a more tender age. And I like she like runs like does her Naruto run. And like
when she cries, and she also has the same like fist animation, like as in the original FF7 game. Right. I was like, oh man, like that's the nostalgia right there, where it's like, man, they're just really like helping us remember like what the original FF7 was like with that animation. So cool.
Jay Bales wrote into us, and he says, "Happy New Year, thank you guys." He says, "Did you guys play in English or Japanese? I found the English dub to be corny and hilarious at times. What do angels dream of?" is what he says in quotes. But the Japanese dub just felt better. What did you think? I actually didn't play with Japanese at all. I am not a big fan of Japanese VO. I personally never understood why it was necessarily better. But That was a mystery to me. Did either of you play with Japanese voice acting in any way?
I did not, but I did consider it because when I watched again, I played the original FF7 in Japanese. So like my native original experience with FF7 is completely in Japanese. So like I always thought of these characters as speaking Japanese, and it wasn't until I started watching the American version of Advent Children where I started to kind of like think the other way. But I also watch Advent Children Japanese too. So I think it does kind of make sense because if I feel like Shinra is also like, like this is a pretty Asian world, I guess. I don't know. But I mostly played it in English because I enjoy the Final Fantasy voice casting.
I do too. I personally have no problem with it. And I'll watch if I watch like an occasional anime or something, I'll probably watch that in Japanese. But yeah, generally speaking, and I like having subtitles, by the way, on everything I watch and everything I play. So it's not that. It's just that I want to be able to understand and be more immersed.
Sure. You want to be able to be immersed in it and natively understand it without having to think like that extra layer of thinking about it, right?
Right. Unless the intention, and I've said this is so controversial to some people, but I've said this before, is like, I think it would have been fucking awesome if Metal Gear Solid 3 was entirely in Russian. Because they're speaking Russian to each other the entire game.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that would be cool. If there's an intent to it, I think it's different. But just to save myself the embarrassment of having to not know what's going on even less than I usually do, I just have the English voice acting going.
I played The Witcher 3 in Polish just to have it in like just to have it in like the native language, and it was pretty fucking awesome.
That's neat.
Not to be racist against Polish, but like it just made it sound like more of a fantasy setting,
Right. That's probably cool. And they probably put a lot of love into the Polish voice acting too, compared to some of the other.
It was great. Geralt sounded great. Everyone sounds great,
Yeah.
Dustin, did you mess with the Japanese stuff at all?
No, this is a weird mixed thing for me in that with anime, I'm always watching in Japanese. Always. But I don't know. I don't know if it has to do with these characters. I guess going back to Kingdom Hearts and hearing Cloud in that game, which might not even be the same voice actor, but it clicks in my brain that these characters should be speaking in English. And there were, like Gene said, that additional layer. There are certain games like, I think Tales of Arise I played in Japanese, which there is that annoying aspect where if you're playing sometimes if you're playing in Japanese and you hear them talk in battle, it can get like kind of annoying, or you can't see what they're saying at the same time. Actually, it was Xenoblade 3. I was playing in Japanese.
Yes.
and there's some parts where they don't have subtitles for what they're saying, which I almost switched back when I was still playing it. But for this one, no, I was all English, and I thought it was good. I don't know. It just felt right for me for that.
I really loved the J-pop ballad at the end for the ending when it just kicks in. And like that was when it made me feel things for the ending. I was
what did you think about the ending? I thought I love the sacrificial last fight, and it's just so it's crazy. Yeah, it's a great ending. What do you think?
I thought it was so awesome. The sacrificial last fight is like the Halo Reach like level, like where you just have to survive and you know what's gonna happen. Like the cutscene from back then on the PSP still holds up. The way Cloud looks. He looks completely fucking lost. Like he's just waking up and he's just like realizing that like the one guy who's been like standing by him is about to go, and like you could see on his face that's his mind breaking, and it's just so sad. And then the J-pop ballad kicks in, and you're just like, oh my god, it's like a fucking ending of a Cowboy Bebop episode, But these are like Final Fantasy characters. It's fucking rad,
Yeah, it makes me almost wonder or yearn for the friendship that could have developed between the two. It's all these lost opportunities between them. They barely are aware of each other's existence, really, compared to the relationship that they could have. And imagining Zack as a character of your party.
Yeah. Oh, and going back to the love triangle, it did definitely clarify to me the love triangle. And the next time I play FF7, I'm like staying away from Aerith, like as Cloud, because it's like I gotta respect my boy.
Yeah, totally.
Zack,
totally.
Yeah,
totally. I think that's kind of the way it should be. Like Tifa and Cloud belong together, in my opinion, regardless of the distraction in quotes of Aerith, and with the subtext of Crisis Core added to it. Yeah, and knowing that Cloud would know that, it does put a different context as the player onto it, which is cool. What did you think about the end, Dustin?
I really like in particular how it shows the opening scene of Final Fantasy VII, and it's cool because it feels full circle because the game starts with Zack on the train, which is obviously just like Final Fantasy VII starts, and then you see that intro basically again, but with Cloud. And yeah, I love that shootout ending. It like kind of gives me like a Red Dead Redemption vibe, like the last stand.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and it's cool. And I wonder, I don't know, I guess we've already kind of breached the barrier on certain spoiler aspects, but it's cool to see this moment that breaks Cloud like fully. I mean, after he's been in a tube for 4 years. So there's obviously a lot of mental anguish going on, but then seeing this happen, and it was really interesting to see from the context of Remake and the end of Remake as well. And as soon as I was done and the credits were rolling, I was like, damn, do I need to play Remake again now? Because that's just immediately, I was like, I feel like I want to play Remake. I resisted because I want to do what Colin's going to do and play it, a few months before Rebirth. But damn, an ending like that makes you instantly want to go into the next part is awesome.
Yeah, I started a basic original Final Fantasy VII run because I was just like I really want to continue the story. And yeah, like I'm glad that you brought up the book ending of Cloud doing the same thing of the train, because it's like, it's heroic, it's epic, because it's like the epic intro to FF7, but like in the context of Crisis Core, it's also sad because here's this lonely guy who just walked into a fucking city and now he's just LARPing as a guy as his best friend. It's like there's a lot of tragedy to that too, and he has no fucking idea what he's doing.
Yeah, it's totally true. And this is the beauty again of like you don't expect to find stories such as this in environments such as this. That's what's so fun about video games generally. It's what I always try to encourage people in my life, like my sister, for instance, one of my sisters that just doesn't understand games. I'm like, but she's a prolific lover of literature. She teaches AP Lit in high school, and it's like, don't you understand? Don't you understand that there's stories here worth telling? And I think that this story is very much worth telling. And in fact, Devin Size says, answer now, Zack or Cloud? Dustin?
Man, that is really tough. I gotta go with Cloud though. Because I don't know. It's interesting because he's so wimpy in this game, and then he's so cool in the next game, and then he kind of loses it. But I don't know. I'm a Cloud man.
What do you say, Gene?
God, it's tough, man. Because like I've really grown to love Zack, especially through Crisis Core. Like I love that he is the simplest character in this whole universe. He's a complete victim of consequences and circumstances. And I guess so is Cloud too. So I don't know. Like I also love the tragedy of Cloud though, because like Cloud and Final Fantasy VII came out at a time when like a lot of pop culture stories were coming out about like broken identities, fractured identities, and disassociated identities. Like Fight Club came out around that time. And so when I watched Fight Club, I was like, oh shit, this is like Final Fantasy VII. So like going back to your literature discussion, it's like, yeah, I think there's like it was kind of like the genesis, pun intended, of like that kind of like fractured identity storytelling. So there's something really special about Cloud and how broken he is and how he continues to be broken in Avid Children. Like I get why he's like such a depressed, like sad boy, because like he did nothing.
I personally choose Cloud just because we know him more, but
yeah,
we're going to find out more about Zack, I think.
I can't wait.
And it's going to be wild.
Spoilers for Remake, but I lost my mind when they did that when they did the Crisis Core sequence in Remake. I was just like, I can't believe they're actually going to do this. That's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, I dig it too. And then we didn't get a write-in about this, but I have to ask you guys, the Turks, love them.
I love
these guys. And it brings me back to memories of eBay in the 90s. I remember being on eBay in like 1998 looking, and there was like a Turks Japanese poster that someone somehow procured, and I remember bidding on, and I wanted it so bad, and then I got outbid, and And it was during that era, and Gene, you could definitely relate, although I'm sure you can too, Dustin, is that like when you just didn't have access to fucking anything. I remember going to like a local comic convention in 1999 on Long Island, and they had a Tales of Destiny poster, and I was like, I was like, what? And I just bought it because it was weird. And now these things are a dime a dozen, but I always remember the Turks as being the first kind of this. I wanted more visuals of them. I wanted to know more about them. It was frustrating that I couldn't. And now we get a lot of them, and I really dig them. I especially like Cisne. I think she's really cool in this game. But of course, you have to love Reno and Rude and Sang and all of them. Gene, best Turk.
I've best Turk. Definitely Rito for me.
Sure,
because his design is so fucking cool. And the interesting thing about the Turks, one is that like I've designed my own like suit wearing like off them, like completely just
awesome.
like the Turks are the origin of like how I pick and choose my suits. And
Love
two, and they're based of like Yakuza styling too, right? And two, it's interesting to see them trying to retcon the Turks as like morally ambiguous, lovable guys, because like we all fucking love them, right? And it's like, but like they still did like the 9/11 of like Midgar in FF7.
Sure. Totally.
You know, they still they're like, even in remake, Reno still pushes the fucking button to like drop the plate onto Sector 7. And it's like these guys do a fucking horrible mass like murder event, and like we still love these guys. You know?
Yeah, it's classic villainy. I mean, it's just I often wonder about that. I was talking to my dad about that actually recently. Like, why am I so attracted, or are many people so attracted to the villains? Because I don't consider myself a villainous person. I'm not a bad or mean person at all, but I love Cobra. I love the Batman villains. I love those guys. Like, it's just so strange. Just a fucking dude with a burlap sack running around gassing people. It's like, what the fuck? It's awesome. Good shit. Dustin.
Yeah.
Best Turk.
Dude, I'm not sure about best Turk, but I do a small story from the last E3. They had a huge booth for Final Fantasy VII Remake that had like a reactor that actually had like smoke come out of it. And when you got an appointment, you got a ticket that was a Shinra ticket. And the people they had manning the lines were dressed as Turks. Oh, and I think they told them, they're like, you be not too rude, but be firm and a bit rough, like telling people where to go. And a woman dressed as a Turk firmly told me to move ahead in a slightly aggressive way. It was a little bit arousing, not gonna lie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what? It was very arousing, not gonna lie. Yeah. But so yeah, that was just a very nice touch at that E3. But yeah, Turks are sick. I don't know which one's my favorite though.
Yeah, they're all cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just remember being so enthralled with them. I don't think I even really understood Final Fantasy VII for what it was when I first played it. And I definitely didn't in 8th grade. I just didn't understand it. It's funny that, I mean, let me end here and ask this. Isn't it interesting, Gene, that this game seems prescient? Like Final Fantasy VII seems prescient to me. It just seems, it's about environmentalism and environmental terrorists. It's about mega corporations and private military and endless energy and the abuse of a planet and the destruction of peoples. And I don't know, there's something about it that feels current.
You brought up Zack being a buttoned-up corporate man, and it's like he is a victim of, you know, if you want to get into capitalism, like you know, sorry to sound like a Saints Row 4 character.
No, it's all good.
Yeah. but Zack is absolutely like when I say he's a victim of circumstance, like he's a victim of capitalism. Like he was a company man, and look what the company did to him. Hojo just took his body and just like put a number on it and just did whatever Hojo does. Although to be fair, Hojo is a particularly dastardly, disgusting character.
Definitely.
And the one thing that I'm kind of looking forward to and not really looking forward to is how Remake Part 2 is going to depict Hojo at the beach at Costa del Sol.
Yeah, that's going to be all. Dude, there's
going to be in HD. We're going to see Hojo in the sunlight in HD. That's going to be so
wait.
fucking gross.
I can't. Yeah, it's going to be awful, but also awesome. I mean, the meat of Final Fantasy VII we're going to get in this next game, I think. And I'm so relieved that we know that it's going to be a trilogy. So because I was really worried that they were going to try to do this quick. And I'm so glad that they've really, because there's Empire Strikes Back type Act 2 vibes that get so dark in Final Fantasy VII that I really can't wait to see.
Yeah.
To see the new one. But
I hope they end it at the slap fight between Scarlet and Tifa.
Yes.
on the Junin character, on the Junin canon. Like that would be the most epic cliffhanger.
Oh my god! Yeah, seeing the whole apparatus, like the gun batteries,
exactly.
Are gonna be
my
dope.
god, Junon and the weapons coming out. Oh my god,
Yeah, it's gonna be. So
I'm excited.
Rebirth. I'm surprised they didn't call Rebirth Reunion. You know?
Yeah. I'm excited to see Gold Saucer.
Oh yeah,
of course.
It'll be in this too.
Yeah.
I assume, unless they change things around. Yeah, that'll be cool because that really speaks to. That's where you can waste a lot of people's time. Keep a tight narrative, which I think they did in the first one, and then have this thing you can just get to and go to. There's something very nostalgic about the Gold Saucer to me too. I don't know what that is, what that's all about. I was looking at this up real quick though. Yeah, I wanted to give. There's something awesome. There are 2 layers of villains in Final Fantasy VII because you have like the Turks in some way and Sephiroth and all of that, I guess, is its own thing. But then you have like the executives of Shinra, and they themselves are all pretty cool too. Like Palmer and Heidegger. We see Rufus right in this one a little bit.
Rufus is amazing in remake, you know.
And and Scarlet, like you said, and all this. So it's cool that they managed. Final Fantasy VI did a little bit of that too, with like Kefka and then the government itself being both bad guys and one kind of substituting the other.
General Leo too, who was the unambiguous company man who was trying to do the right thing, you know.
Exactly, and all the rumors you probably remember. We wanted to play as General Leo.
Oh my god, we were all trying we were all hackers trying to play as General Leo. For fuck's sake.
Yeah, have you played Final Fantasy VI at all, Dustin?
I've never finised it.
Oh, okay. Well,
arguably the best one.
I agree.
I know. I'm gonna play it on PS4.
Yeah. There's General Leo is like a character you could just play for a little while, and there was like it was very Aerith like rumors about how you could revive him or get him back.
I had a friend who played Final Fantasy VI recently, and he was like, "Holy shit! The whole ending sequence, still holds up. Like fucking like 30 years later, you could still be like, wow." Like I can't imagine how people's minds were back in the 90s. It's like I was there, man. You know, like my life changed. You know.
Yeah, Final Fantasy VI I was 10 years old when it came out. I had actually just turned 11, and it was a seminal game, way above my head. My brother was so into Final Fantasy II, and I loved watching him play it. Final Fantasy III, of course, is how we knew it back then. I was like, well, I want to be like Dagon, and I want to buy this. And I was into other RPGs at the time, but it's a monumentally important game to my development as a gamer, no doubt.
Me too. As a person, for me, you know.
Absolutely. Well, this was a fun conversation about Crisis Core Reunion. You can play it now. It's available on everything, including Xbox consoles, which is rare for Final Fantasy. Don't think you're going to see much of that moving forward. I'm very interested in why. It's especially funny. Some people were making jokes about it because it basically just has a Crisis or a Final Fantasy remake kind of like ad almost stapled to the end of it that you can't play on that console, which is right. Which is funny.
It's to be continued a remake. It's like or Final Fantasy VII. It's like, oh god.
So that was strange, but it is available everywhere. I'm glad that they've proliferated this one because I think it's an important game. And it's one of PSP's finest games, no doubt about it. Top 5, I would say easily. So it's cool to have it here with us. Do you have any closing comments, Gene, before we go?
No, it definitely is one of the top PSP games. The mission structure reminds me of Peace Walker, another great game that I think people like underrate, and also had like a really snappy UI, really fun mission structure where you just go in and go out. So I'm just glad that we got to play it this time, and I'm super happy that I got to talk about it with you guys. It was just fun talking about Final Fantasy with you guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. It was awesome to have you as well, and we'll have you back.
Happy New Year.
You're welcome. You're welcome anytime. Yes, and Happy New Year, Dustin.
Final thoughts. This game was awesome. I enjoyed it way more than I expected. I thought that I was gonna get a game that looked really pretty, but maybe had some dated aspects, just because I was never played the PSP version, and I was pleasantly surprised. So I love this game. I feel like I will go back to it at some point. And this is great. Gene, finally on a podcast together, me and him. So this has been awesome. Yeah. And let's do it again soon.
We certainly will. And I want to thank all of you out there for your love, kindness, and support. Happy New Year to everyone out there. Thank you for being here with us. Got a lot of kind messages over the holidays. And obviously, support is through the roof for our shows, and we just couldn't do it without you. So hope you enjoyed this conversation. We'll have more game conversations soon. I want to do something about the Callisto Protocol, but I don't know if we're going to. And
I still haven't finished that.
Yeah, I've been playing through it a couple hours a night, and I have a lot to say about it. Like I'm trying to figure out what a good venue would be to do that, and there's just so many games coming out that we're going to be playing, that we're going to be doing a lot more of these kinds of conversations. We'll certainly have Gene back, and we'll get everyone else involved as they, we don't want to force anyone to play games here at our company. So it's like based on what you naturally play, organically play. And this one we happen to organically play. So be well out there. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols and Sacred Symbols Plus. And until next time, goodbye.
See ya.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.